This is an iPad, and this is an iPad, and this is also an iPad. When I was younger, I was a handheld kid. I loved my Game Boy Advance, and when Apple started making the iPod Touch and iPad, it's safe to say I was hooked. You just have to take a look at my purchase history to see that not many games went unplayed between 2010 to 2014. Games ranging from licensed movie titles like Avatar and The Dark Knight Rises, to full-blown ports of console games like Prince of Persia Warrior Within. There was even a unique Dead Space game exclusively released on mobile devices, with plenty more that I'm probably forgetting and have since been lost to time, having been delisted from the App Store. Like, does anyone remember Backbreaker? A game marketed at the time as having the same ragdoll engine as GTA 4. It got me thinking, surely I'm not the only one to remember these, and how do I get my hands on them? I'm Zach, I make videos, and as you can see, I've got a couple of iPads next to me. This is an iPad Mini 2, and this tank of a thing is an iPad 2nd generation. Look, I've been thinking a lot lately about my own gaming history, and at a specific moment in time, a lot of my gaming was done on mobile devices, namely an iPod Touch 4th gen. Kids nowadays have Roblox and Fortnite that they play on their iPads, but in the late 2000s and early 2010s, we had big developers porting over and creating games specifically for these devices, because they were seen as like the next big gaming revolution. So I thought, what would be better than picking myself up a couple of these iPads? I've got 3 here. I'll explain why I've got 3 later, and loading up on a couple of those old iPad games that I used to play when I was an early teenager with my little brother, and see if they hold up. Surely it's not too hard to actually get them on there, but we'll get to that. So to begin with, I went digging to see what devices would be the easiest to get some of these old games on, and I found some listings on Facebook for a iPad 2nd gen, some iPad minis, and also an iPad Air 1. The reason for this is the iPad 2nd gen was a 32-bit device, which is what these games were made around. The iPad Mini 2 could be downgraded to an iOS version to enable that, and same goes with the iPad Air. Plus, the guy gave me a really good deal on all 3, so I couldn't say no. For now, I'll use the iPad Mini 2 as an example, and keep the iPad 2nd gen as is with games from my existing library downloaded from my purchases. So to begin with, the iPad Mini 2 had already been updated to iOS 12, which won't work for any sideloading or jailbreaking. For this, we had to use legacy iOS kit, which is available on GitHub, to downgrade it to an iOS 10 version off a Mac to allow some of these 32-bit games to be played. I read the how-to guide, plugged it all in, waited and waited and waited.
You're kidding.
And it didn't work.
Just work.
I tried several times with the legacy iOS kit downgrading tool to 10 point whatever, and it just kept failing. It wouldn't allow me to turn the iPad into DFU mode. So I had to go digging. I found a thread on Reddit, thank you Reddit, and do not use the USB-C iPhone cable to Lightning if you've got it. It needs to be USB-A cable. So thanks Reddit, you saved me a couple of hours there. With a new USB cable in hand, it rebooted, and I was now on iOS 10, thankfully. I haven't seen iOS 10 in a long time. Now I already had the IPAs of the games that I wanted to play, and there's plenty of archive databases online, so a simple Google will have you there in no time. Now I switched over to my PC, loaded up Sideloadly, which is a sideloading tool to be able to push IPAs over to my iPad. Now with all of that out of the way and some games successfully loaded onto this iPad, let's have a look at them.
Yes.
Gameloft are still around, but back in the boom of the App Store, they were released knockoff versions of the latest console releases. When you saw that logo pop up, you knew you were in for a solid time. Well, solid enough for an iPod Touch anyway. I devoured basically all of them. From 9mm, a Max Payne-esque cop shooter with slow-mo mechanics, to the Modern Combat series, which is a not so subtle take on Call of Duty. Uncharted? No, sorry, it's Shadow Guardian to me. Halo? Well, if you squint hard enough, Nova could pass as it. You want to run around in a GTA-style open-world crime game? They had the Gangstar series for your NPC killing pleasure. If you want to play an open-world Batman game or Spider-Man game, they had you covered. You get the gist. They don't run super well on this older iPad 2nd gen, but you know, they have character. Gameloft helped elevate what mobile gaming was at the time. So Gameloft, if you're watching, you're not. Thank you for bringing these types of experience to the smartphone / iPod carrying masses. I appreciate you. EA were big into the mobile space as well at the time, with Dead Space releasing on mobile, a side-scrolling Mirror's Edge game which was pretty decent, and a version of Battlefield Bad Company 2. Dead Space though was a genuinely great experience, with it being completely designed for touch controls and having a unique story. I must have played through it at least 3 times as a young teen, and it still looks and plays well on these devices today. Funnily enough, there was a solid Tiger Woods game that I, not being a fan of golf, loved playing and still do. It's just super therapeutic. I was sitting on the lounge just last night playing it happily while watching TV, which is what these games are made for. It also helped that some of them had local multiplayer, so me and my brother could play together. Some of my fondest memories growing up with a younger brother is trying out the latest games on the App Store with him. We both hunker down next to each other and dive into a Bluetooth, yes Bluetooth, multiplayer match of Bad Company 2. We had a console, but something about each having a device and being able to play independently just screamed yes to us. We'd race each other in Real Racing 2, with me winning, of course, humble brag, and just enjoyed playing together on games that didn't really cost more than $10 each. Big AAA games are coming to mobile now, which is great, but they just don't feel the same. The games on mobile, and in general, felt simpler back then, with most of them having a price tag and not filled to the brim with microtransactions. I kind of miss just putting $20 in my Apple account and loading up a licensed / rip-off game from Gameloft, or a bespoke experience for mobile. It just felt easy, which is why I'm glad to have these as little keepsakes. People collect consoles, which, yeah, I would too, but I'm starting my own little app collection for old time's sakes. I might even put Battlefield on both of these and see if the Bluetooth multiplayer still works. I hope Reese's game. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of those older classics on iPad. I know I have, and I feel like I'm only scratching the surface when it comes to these old iOS games. Speaking of, there is a channel that I want to give a shout out, Diego Reviews, I think that's the title. I'll leave the link in the comments. He does full review deep dives into specific games, so I think he's touched on The Dark Knight Rises and The Amazing Spider-Man in the past. So give him a look in. That's kind of what inspired me to track some of these older devices down and play them on the original hardware, and it has been so much fun. Look, a lot of these games have been completely lost to time. I know that I'm lucky and I went crazy in the early 2010s and just purchased a bunch of them, so I have them, but a lot of them I haven't, so I've had to sideload them, and it is fun. It takes a lot of patience. I say a little bit of patience to get them going. Some just don't at all. I know I tried to run Infinity Blade on the iPad mini 2 and it just completely crashes. So I will be trying to track that down, because that is just a classic that you might have not even heard of before. So as a pure conservation effort, I think it's really important, and I'm going to be loading these things up to the brim with all these old iPad games. So if you've got any recommendations that I might not have even touched on, leave them in the comments. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And look, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be sitting on the lounge and playing some more Tiger Woods. Thanks. I'll see you in the next one.